We start with the coronavirus situation here in Japan, where 10 prefectures, including the capital, remain under a state of emergency. And one of them, Okinawa, is struggling with a surge in infections. Officials in the southern prefecture confirmed nearly 300 new cases on Wednesday. That's the highest per capita figure in the country. Authorities blamed the surge on an influx of tourists during a week-long holiday about a month ago. Officials on the remote island of Ishigaki have declared a nearly 2-week shutdown of every elementary and junior high school. Hospitals across Okinawa report over 90% of their beds are taken. Some have restricted the number of outpatients and inpatients. The health ministry has released new data on the variant first detected in India, now known as Delta. Screenings have confirmed a total of 53 infections in 12 prefectures. The figure has roughly doubled during the past week. It does not include samples taken at airports. Experts are warning a new variant detected in Vietnam could also spread in Japan.
New cases spiked in May in Vietnam. That suggests the variant is more transmissible. The number of travelers between Vietnam and Japan is much higher than between Japan and India. The variant originating in Vietnam is likely to become more common in Japan.
On Tuesday, officials in the western city of Kobe announced a new variant has been found there. They said the mutation likely occurred in Japan. Experts say the nation should speed up vaccinations before the virus can mutate and render vaccines ineffective. Japan's vaccination rate is still sitting below 10%. The government has enlisted the help of businesses, and in less than 3 weeks, companies can start handing out shots to their own employees. Some major corporations, including Japan Airlines, plan to begin on the very first day. Others will give some staff priority. All Nippon Airways is looking at inoculating flight crew on international routes first. And East Japan Railway Company plans to start with station staff and train operators. Then there's the logistics. Sumitomo Life Insurance is already well at work planning out where to give the jabs. But Japanese officials say companies don't need to worry about at least one major consideration.
The government will shoulder all basic costs for inoculations, including wages for doctors and nurses.
Japan started its rollout in February with healthcare workers. The elderly were next on the list, and soon that'll be expanded to everyone 12 and older, with priority on people with underlying conditions. The move comes as Tokyo, Osaka, and several of the other prefectures remain under the state of emergency to tamp down on new infections. Health authorities across Japan confirmed more than 3,000 new cases on Wednesday. Nearly 500 of them were in Tokyo. Now, Japan's top coronavirus advisor says the Olympic Games would never ordinarily be held in a country facing the current health crisis. Omi Shigeru told a lower house committee meeting on Wednesday if the Games do go ahead, residents deserve to know why.
These games, what exactly are they for? It is extremely important for officials to provide a clear vision and explain why they're being held.
Omi says hearing that reasoning could help motivate people to continue taking antivirus measures. Meanwhile, NHK has learned some of the doctors set to work during Olympic competitions are pulling out. Venue medical officers supervise the staff who treat athletes and spectators. With many now too busy to take on that role, organizers are scrambling to fill the gaps. And that's on top of a lack of volunteers. The Games needs 80,000. It's now short 10,000. Some dropped out when former Tokyo 2020 president Mori Yoshiro made global headlines with sexist remarks. Others are afraid of becoming infected. Organizers say the issue will not affect regular operations once the event kicks off on July 23rd. Well, more and more people here in Japan are turning to welfare amid the pandemic. Applications for benefits grew in fiscal 2020 for the first time since the aftermath of the global financial crisis. Government figures show applications hit more than 220,000, up over 2% from the year before. The latest monthly number for March was over 22,000. That's 8.6% more than a year earlier and marks the 7th monthly rise. Welfare Ministry officials say people are under increasing financial pressure, with many struggling to find work in the face of the pandemic. They warned the prolonged state of emergency could make things worse. A Japanese government panel has been looking at ways to boost economic growth. It's calling for innovation in areas such as green technologies and domestic supply chains. As part of that, it wants to set up an $18 billion fund to help create a greener society. The Growth Strategy Council laid out a draft plan on Wednesday.
The principle of the growth strategy is to improve productivity and wages, to increase consumption, and achieve strong growth.
The Council wants to encourage investment in equipment that'll help drive decarbonization. It also suggests setting up domestic chip production centers to ensure the stable supply of semiconductors used in everything from cars to game consoles. To enhance data protection, the Council wants to build new data centers at 5 core locations and up to 10 regional sites. The government looks set to approve the plan in mid-June. Members of the Trans-Pacific Partnership have begun the process to welcome Britain into the trade pact. The nation has been reaching out for new economic partners since leaving the European Union. The 11-member TPP decided to open talks with Britain at a ministerial-level meeting on Wednesday. Japan was the chair. It says the TPP will play a crucial role in strengthening economies hit hard by the pandemic.
Now, the CPTPP is moving on to a new chapter with accession requests by the United Kingdom in February.
Task force groups will now conduct negotiations for Britain's entry. The British Trade Secretary took to Twitter with the news. Liz Truss called the trade deal a huge opportunity which will bring Britain closer to some of the world's fastest-growing economies. Now, current members, including Japan, Australia, and Canada, accounted for 15% of global trade as of 2018, covering a market of 500 million people. The United States was part of early TPP talks, but pulled out soon after former President Donald Trump took office. After the virtual meeting, Nishimura said Britain's joining would help build a free and fair economic order. He added Japan is in the process of strengthening its ties with the country. A Hong Kong museum commemorating China's deadly 1989 crackdown on pro-democracy protesters is temporarily shutting its doors. The museum says Hong Kong authorities came to inspect the property on Tuesday, saying it did not have the proper license. The June 4th museum has been hosting exhibits about the victims of the Tiananmen Square incident since 2014, despite repeated suspensions. This closure comes just days before the anniversary. The timing has prompted concerns over censorship. The group behind the museum hosts an annual June 4th vigil, but police refused to issue this year's permit, citing the pandemic. Local media reported 3,000 police officers are expected to be deployed near the museum and around the venue on Friday. Officials at Japan Post say a former postmaster swindled more than $11 million from customers over a 25-year period. They say the man falsely promised to pay the victims high rates of interest from savings deposits.
We deeply apologize for causing a great deal of trouble and concern to those who suffered damage, our customers, and people involved.
The man, now in his 60s, continued the scam even years after retiring from a post office in Nagasaki. An in-house investigation found he fraudulently collected approximately $11.3 million from 62 acquaintances, relatives, and customers. It lasted until this past January. He told them he was putting their money in special savings accounts which didn't exist. The man paid out about $2.5 million of the money to the victims, telling them it was interest and principal. The officials say he claims he spent the rest on property, golf, dining, and drinking. Japan Post says it'll compensate the victims for the remaining funds and charge the man for the amount. It'll also file a criminal complaint with the police. In other news, a major Japanese department store chain has teamed up with a developer of recycling technologies to help reduce apparel waste. Takashimaya has started selling 60 types of clothing that can be repeatedly recycled. Customers can return the items when they no longer want to wear them. Polyester used in the garments will be recycled to make brand new clothes. The technology and know-how used in the process were developed by Japan Environment Planning. Now, another major Japanese retailer, Aeon, is also stepping up efforts to recycle unwanted clothes. Next, in weather, unusually warm conditions are baking western parts of Europe. Our meteorologist Jonathan O has the forecast for there and elsewhere in our World Weather Report.
Hello, warm weather will continue to be the story as we go throughout the day on Thursday into western and southern areas of Europe. We've been dealing with some warm weather over the past few days from the weekend through Monday and Tuesday, even part of the day on Wednesday, looking at some warm weather. Here's a look at some video coming out of France as the country experienced summer-like hot weather Tuesday after days of wet weather, with the capital seeing 27 degrees Celsius. France is gradually lifting its coronavirus restrictions, so restaurants, theaters, and museums are now open, with many Parisians flocking to dining terraces, a major feature of their lifestyle. We are looking at warmer than average conditions into next week, but we are going to see a chance for some rain as we go throughout the next couple of days or so. We have a low that's been working its way from the Iberian Peninsula, so that's going to introduce some showers into Paris as we go through the day on Thursday, also down toward Madrid as well, with warmth. The big story down toward the south here, highs in the upper 20s into places like Rome with a high of 28, 26 in Athens, and even up to Berlin looking at 26 as we go through the day. Major problems when it comes to the drought. It's been months where some places have not seen any significant rain. Notice exceptional drought covering a good portion of the desert Southwest, even into California as well, with most of the West seeing some form of drought, and we're not seeing anything in terms of relief. High pressure dominating the weather with highs in the mid-20s from Denver to Los Angeles, with some locations toward Las Vegas and into Arizona seeing highs into the upper 30s or even lower 40s as we go through Thursday. So that's going to be a bit of a problem. Meanwhile, across Japan, we are looking at some clouds to build up from the west, and we're looking at the rain to also start picking up as we go through the next couple of days, with a low moving in from the west and one from the north. That's going to hit two areas of Japan, north and central areas, so make sure you have the umbrella handy as you go throughout the next couple of days. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.
A court in Moscow has sentenced Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny to more than 2 years in prison. He denounced the punishment as political. Supporters say Aung San Suu Kyi is in good health and are calling for her immediate release. The military has detained the Myanmar leader after seizing control. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says his country has passed the peak of a second coronavirus infection wave. And a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran and his son are accused of helping former Nissan Motor Company chief Carlos Ghosn flee prison in Japan.
Opposition leaders in Israel have less than 2 hours to form a coalition that would oust the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but there's still no final deal between the two figures at the centre of the talks. Russia and the US are in direct contact about a cyber attack on the world's largest meat processing company. Criminals are demanding a ransom to give back control of JBS's computer networks. China's president has called on the Communist Party to widen the country's circle of friends by creating a trustworthy and lovable image. That's despite being in open conflict with the West on crucial issues. And President Biden has suspended leases to drill for oil and gas in Alaska. It's a reversal of the Trump administration's decision to expand fossil fuel and mineral exploration in what's often described as America's last wilderness. And those are your headlines.